Okay, welcome everybody to our actually it's our second nutrition class. We did one in person a while back, and this one we decided to do on Zoom because it's a lot easier to jump on the computer than it is um, to get here in person. So we are going to get started. I am going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the general manager of Upgrade Labs, as most of you know, and I'm also a holistic health coach, and I have been for the last 20 years. One of the reasons I love biohacking is because we can really upgrade what we're doing in all areas of our life by using this technology. But what I have found is that if we're not paying attention to our nutrition, then the other things aren't going to work as well. And so all the things that we're doing in the center, all of our workouts, all of those things that, we're trying to accomplish aren't going to be as effective if our nutrition isn't in line. And so I put together a workshop for you to biohack your nutrition. And I'm going to start screen sharing here. Okay, so nutrition hacks. What can we do to increase our energy, decrease inflammation, feed our mitochondria, feed our cells, and accomplish what we want to accomplish? I'm going to go over 3 nutrition hacks that are pretty simple: what, when, and how. What you eat, when you eat, and how to do it. Because I think that's the most important thing, is how do we implement it into our everyday life? I started off overweight as a teenager, and I would have done anything to lose weight. I just wanted to be thin. That was my main goal in life, is how do I be thin? And this is in the 80s. And so I did what everyone did, which was restrict calories. And so I would eat about 800 to 1,000 calories a day. It was mostly carbohydrate-rich foods, where I was eating reduced fat wheat thins and just eating all the things that were labeled as diet foods, fat-free fad. And I lost weight, but I was always hungry, and I didn't have the energy that I do now. And so when I was about 35, I got very ill, started having digestive issues, leaky gut, ulcerative colitis, a lot of issues with my gut. And I went to the doctor and I was getting heartburn all the time. And I told him, I said, I'm getting heartburn all the time. And he said, well, you can take this purple pill. And so that was an acid blocker. And so I started taking these acid blockers. And of course, what did that do? It took away all the acid in my stomach. So when I finally figured out that that wasn't going to work, after I got sicker and sicker and sicker, I thought, you know what, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And so I needed to figure it out. And so I learned how to eat. I learned how to eat whole foods and protein and good nutrient dense vegetables and healthy fats. And what was interesting is that once I started eating that way to heal my gut, my weight stabilized, and it was never an issue anymore on losing weight, because my body was functioning the way that it was meant to function. And so through that, I, also found out that this is how you prevent and heal autoimmune issues and heart disease and diabetes and all of these chronic conditions that people deal with on a daily basis, that we can fix it with nutrition. And so I became a holistic health coach, and I have been doing this for about 20 years and teaching classes. And so my goal is to always empower people to take charge of their health. What can you do? How can you change your health so that you have energy and you feel good and you can accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish? So I always suggest really getting clear about what you want. What do you want? Why do you want it? And what do you need to do or change to make it happen? And so these are the 3 nutrition hacks: what you eat, when to eat it, and how to do it. So the first thing, and I know that this may be basic for some people, but eating whole foods. Whole foods feed the metabolism, and our metabolism is the mechanism and what determines how many calories we burn and whether or not we're a fat burner or a sugar burner. So how do we increase our metabolism? And that is by eating whole foods. So the foods we want to focus on are going to be organic veggies, clean protein, and I'll go more into that in just a moment. Healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, raw organic nuts and seeds, low sugar organic fruits like berries, bone broth, and fermented foods. A couple of reasons we want to do this. First of all, your body knows how to process clean foods. Your body understands what to do with those foods, and we feed our mitochondria and our cells with healthy fats and clean proteins. The other reason that we want to do this is it balances and stabilizes our blood sugar. When we eat too much sugar or processed foods, our blood sugar goes up, and then our insulin levels go up. When we have high insulin, we have the higher chance of developing prediabetes and diabetes. So if we eat clean whole foods, we have less insulin spikes. The foods we want to avoid are sugar because it causes inflammation, causes insulin spikes. Refined carbohydrates, which turn to sugar. Processed foods, which have chemicals, additives, toxins that we want to avoid. It also turns to sugar. Gluten. Most people, I think, especially in this field, are aware of the fact that gluten is not good for our gut, for anybody, whether you're gluten intolerant or not. The way that we process wheat is very inflammatory to our gut, and pretty much anytime we consume it, unless it's ancient, unless it's from a company, usually from Europe, that is not treated with glyphosate. Some people can handle it, but most people, it damages the lining of the gut. It also spikes blood sugar. Alcohol, that's something we want to limit, not something you absolutely have to cut out. Choosing the right kind of alcohol is key. Clean distilled spirits tend to be the best, like vodka and tequila. However, we're not overdoing it on alcohol. It's something that we save for special occasions, if you drink it at all. Inflammatory fats, seed oils, hydrogenated fats, toxins and pesticides. We want to be very careful about what we're putting into our body because our toxic load is going to determine or be a factor in inflammation levels in the body. And foods that you're sensitive to. So you may have done a food sensitivity test where you can find out what foods that you're sensitive to, but also if you are finding that you're getting symptoms after you're eating a certain food, then that is something that you really want to pay attention to. So listen to your body and try to pay attention to when you eat something, how you feel after you eat it. That's going to give you a really clear idea of what you're actually sensitive to. You don't have to have a food sensitivity test, although it is very helpful. Doing a food elimination test where you're not eating you're eating a very basic diet and then you add in one thing at a time if you think that you're sensitive to them is a really great way to do it as well. So the benefits of eating whole foods: you increase your energy, you sustain a healthy weight, you reduce cravings, optimize your metabolism, increase longevity, lower inflammation, and increase absorption of nutrients. So let's talk about what to eat. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second here. So there is a lot of conversation about macronutrients and how to understand what your body needs. So the most important thing is that we're eating a low carbohydrate diet. And the way that we do this is by choosing foods first that feed our metabolism, like lean proteins or proteins, just in general, clean proteins. So when we're thinking about proteins, if we're looking at red meat, we want to have grass-fed, grass-finished beef. We want to have pasture-raised chicken. chicken that's been pasture raised, and eggs that have been pasture raised and organic, wild caught seafood, especially fatty fish like salmon, and staying away from the fish that are higher in the mercury levels like tuna and the big fishes. Small fish are great because they're super full of omega-3 fatty acids as well, like mackerel, sardines, anchovies are very beneficial. They're smaller fish. They haven't had as much time to develop or to get contaminated with those with the mercury. Then we will also talk about carbohydrates. So when we eat carbohydrates, we want to make sure they're complex carbohydrates from sweet potatoes, winter squashes, from those forms. And even some grains can be inflammatory besides gluten. So quinoa and buckwheat, you might be sensitive to them. Some people are more sensitive to grains, so that's important to pay attention to as well. Getting your carbohydrates from in a complex carbohydrate form, like vegetables that are non-starchy, trying to stay away from potatoes, unless they're sweet potatoes. That is more beneficial than eating the more refined carbohydrates. If you do eat bread, I recommend a gluten-free bread made from seeds, almond flour, sources like that. There are so many more sources now that are available to us when we're eating grain-free, even in breads. And then healthy fats including avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, grass-fed butter, the fats that are high in omega-3 fatty acids to reduce inflammation. I think most people know about seed oils at this point. We don't want to consume seed oils because they're inflammatory to the body. Are there any questions so far? I'm going to talk about macronutrients next and sort of the good mix for macronutrients. And so this is a example of what a macronutrient mix might look like. Now, I want to point out that everybody is different. So you may do well on this mix, and you may need to switch it a little bit up so you have maybe 20% carbs and up your fat intake instead. This is something that I encourage you to play around with. But the most important thing that you can do is track your macronutrients. And the easiest way to do that is in an app. So download whatever macro counting app that you want to, and then start understanding what you're actually eating when it comes to macronutrients. So it is going to show you how many calories that you're eating, but if you understand that you're all this, you don't even think that you are, but you started tracking your food for a couple of days and you're like, oh, well, no wonder I'm at 60% carbohydrates. When we have too many carbohydrates, those turn to glucose. Glucose gets stored as glycogen. Your body always wants to run on glucose first. It's the brain and the body's preferred fuel. It's your fuel of choice. But if you can become metabolically flexible, and what that means is you're switching from a sugar burner to a fat burner and back and forth, then your body can start burning fat more effectively and more efficiently. But you don't know what you don't know. And so until you start tracking your food and understanding, now you don't have to do this forever, but if you do it for a short amount of time, like a week or two, then you're going to get a really good idea of where you may be off track. So if you've done the in-body test and you understand what your basal metabolic resting rate is, and that's how many calories that you burn at rest, then you can sort of hit that as a target, because that's a resting rate. So you're actually going to burn more calories throughout the day than that. You'll be at maybe a 500 to a 700 calorie deficit if you're working with your metabolic resting rate. Now, this is if you're trying to burn fat, if you're trying to get into some of that excess fat storage. So if you stick to that number, let's say your basal metabolic resting rate is 1500, stick to that number and then balance your macronutrients within that number, then your body's going to start burning fat for fuel. So we want to focus on the good quality protein, the healthy fat, and then some complex carbohydrates. And each meal should look like that. So every time you sit down to a meal, you should look at it and say, where's my protein? Where's my healthy fat? And if you're having some veggies, that's your complex carbohydrate, then that should do it. Some people ask about fruit too. Yes, that is a complex carbohydrate, and we can have that. But we do want to stick to the lower glycemic fruits because they release sugar slower. And the slower that you can release that sugar, the better your metabolism is going to work and the less that insulin is going to spike. When we're talking about hormonal health, that's a part of the metabolism as well. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and insulin are the two kingpin hormones that regulate the rest of your hormones. So if you can get your insulin levels under control and your cortisol levels under control, your hormones are going to be balanced much better. And so your metabolism works better. So shoot for 30% protein, 30% carbs, and 40% fat as a starting point. If you find that you're not losing weight or you're not burning fat, then you can switch it up. You could go 50% fat or even 60% fat and lower those carbs even lower. We had talked about protein and how to get enough in. One of the recommendations is to eat 1 gram of protein for every pound that you have. So if you are 150 pounds, you'd be consuming 150 grams of protein. I will say I almost never get to that number, but I shoot for at least 100 grams of protein a day. And what that does is it keeps me satisfied. It keeps my blood sugar stable because protein is going to digest and assimilate a lot slower than a carbohydrate will. It's also very important what you break your fast with. We're going to talk about fasting in just a minute, but that first meal of the day, whether it's at noon or 8 o'clock in the morning, that's when you break your fast. So if you put it together like this, where it's protein, healthy fats, and maybe some complex carbs, you are setting the stage for the rest of the day. Every time you eat something, you are telling your body to do something. If you wake up in the morning and break your fast with a donut, you are telling your body to store fat. You spike your insulin right away, you're telling your body to store fat for the rest of the day. Okay? So when you have your first meal of the day, it's very important to make sure you have protein and healthy fat in that very first meal, and you're going to be setting the stage. So if you're craving carbohydrates all day, there's a couple of things that you can do, one of which is to start with protein, but the other is to do a week-long cleanse of no sugar, very limited carbohydrates, and you can do a reset. Many times if we're craving sugar, it's because we have critters and pathogens and parasites, candida, yeast, things like that. They actually feed on sugar. And so if you are feeding it, they want more. They want more sugar. So if you're craving sugar, do a week-long, very strict, low carbohydrate, no sugar diet, and you will find that it actually changes the microbiome of your gut, and you're going to start craving things differently. Are there any questions on macronutrients? You can raise your hand. You can pop on. Okay. Eating a low carbohydrate diet is also essential to keep your blood sugar level low. And so we want to make sure that we have the protein, the healthy fat, the non-starchy veggies, which will all help stabilize the blood sugar and create an environment where your metabolism is working as it should. The next hack we're going to talk about is intermittent fasting. So this is timed eating. This is narrowing the window where you eat down to 12 hours, could be 10 hours, it could be 8 hours. If you have not done intermittent fasting before, everyone should be waiting 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. What that does is at 12 hours of not consuming any calories, your body will automatically go into fat burning mode. That is the goal, for your body to start burning fat for fuel instead of glucose. Each hour that you extend that fast, so let's say you're going to go to stop eating for 13 hours, you actually double your calorie burn in that hour. Then the next hour that you don't eat, you're going to double it again and double it again and double it again. So if you've extended your non-eating window from 12 to 16 hours, you've exponentially increased your calorie burn for that amount of time. So for men, it's usually recommended that you have an 8-hour eating window and that you narrow your eating window down to 8 hours. For women, starting at 12 hours is a really good goal, and then maybe increasing it to 13, 14, or even 15. Men and women are a little bit different with fasting and intermittent fasting. There's a great book called Fast Like a Girl, talking about how we feed our hormones a little bit differently than men do, and different times of the month that we need to feed our bodies a little bit differently. So just, it's a good resource to have. It's by Dr. Mindy, and it's called Fast Like a Girl. So when the body exhausts its glycogen stores, it's going to start burning fat. Now, the other thing that happens, if we're doing a little bit longer fast, like 18 hours, that's when your body goes into autophagy. And that is the process of the good cells eating the bad cells. So we get damaged parts of the cells. And at 18 hours is when the good part of the cell actually starts chowing down on the bad part of the cell. And so we can increase our cellular health through fasting. What I recommend is 12 hours minimum, increasing that by 1 hour. So maybe you're at 15 hours. And then once a week, if you do a 24-hour fast where you're not consuming any food, just water, maybe lemon water, electrolytes, you reset not only your gut, but also the way that your metabolism is working. And the more often you do that, the more autophagy. So if you do that on a consistent basis, you're not only helping your cellular health, but you're helping your metabolism. You're teaching your body to go from fat burning to sugar burning. We want to be flexible. And people who aren't flexible have metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome means that the body doesn't keep burning, or doesn't go back and forth between burning fat and burning sugar. So the benefits of intermittent fasting, you have more energy because it takes a lot of energy to digest food. And so when you give your digestive system a break, then it's actually going to work better. So increased energy, focused thinking, better digestion. Our digestive system is a very complex system that actually needs to rest so that it can reset itself. And so when we give ourselves that break from eating, it's going to improve our digestion and therefore our assimilation of our food. We have clearer skin. Our face gets less puffy. We have reduced aches and pains, and we have accelerated fat loss. So if you want to get deeper into fasting, there's great resources on that. Like I say, for women, it's called Fast Like a Girl. Lots of resources on fasting, but a lot of it is geared towards men. So how do we do this? Preparation is everything. One of the things that I want to point out is the more decisions that you need to make, the harder it is to stick to a new eating plan or changes. So if you are trying to put in new eating habits, the more decisions that you have to make during the day, that's like a muscle. You have to reset it each day. So by the end of the day, if you've been making decisions all day, it's actually tied to your self-control muscle. It's the same mechanism. So we don't want to rely on self-control. We want to rely on automation. And when you make something a habit, it's an automatic thing. You don't have to think about it anymore. So the more you can automate your food and the food choices, the more successful that you're going to be. So when I went through all my digestive issues, I had to completely change my eating habits. I couldn't eat anything out. I had to eat everything home cooked. I had to bring my own food everywhere I went because I never knew what was going to affect me and what wasn't. And so I got really good at food prep. And once a week, I would go grocery shopping. I would buy everything that I needed. I would prep all my food. I would chop all the veggies. I would make sure that I had all the lean protein. either in the freezer or the fridge, and I was able to pull it out on a daily basis. So I've kept that going for ever since I started doing it. And what it's done is taken the guesswork out of how I'm going to eat that day. So I'm not making decisions on a meal by meal basis on what I'm going to eat. I've already decided. And each meal has a good serving of protein, lean or clean protein. So pasture raised eggs, grass fed beef, whatever it is that I'm going to have. And sourcing that, I think, is one of, the hard parts too. Like you might want to subscribe to Butcher Box that has grass fed, grass finished beef, pasture raised chicken, whatever it is that you want to, use for your protein sources. Get it so that it's either being delivered to your house each month or you know where you're going to get it. Once I think one of the problems with produce too is that people buy a bunch of produce and then it just, in a week or 2 weeks, it's rotted at the bottom of the crisper. And so if you get it, wash it and chop it that same day that you grocery shop and then put it in clear containers where you can actually see it, you're going to be way more likely to use it. But once I've done the weekly shopping and prepping, then I'm going to daily put my meals together. And I just bring pretty much all of my meals with me. So I always have my food with me, and including snacks, including tea, including whatever else I'm going to have during that day. And I bring it with me so that I'm always prepared. Because that's the other thing. When you're not prepared, you're not going to be as likely to eat the way that you want to eat. So be really clear about what it is that you want to accomplish, set that in place, and then you're going to be way more likely to be able to execute the plan. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And you guys can hop back on. I have any questions in the chat? One of the questions we had earlier from Lisa is how to get protein. If you weren't here for that, we were talking about there's a new protein powder that's out that's a bone broth protein, and it's 20 grams of protein for not like 90 calories or 100 calories. And what I found is if I can start with that protein, then my appetite, I don't have those cravings for sugar throughout the day. But if I'm going to start the day with more of a carbohydrate rich diet, then it's much harder. So my favorite app is the Fitbit app, only because it's very familiar to me and it's easy to use. So you don't have to have a Fitbit to use that app, but you can just download it and use it to track your calories. But I found that one is the easiest. I've tried some different ones, but there are several out there. But Fitbit is my favorite. All right. Any other questions? Anyone want to hop on? Anything to add? Okay. Oh, snacks. That's a great question. A couple of things that I do for snacks. One is raw nuts. Raw nuts, because you don't want them coated in seed oils and roasted, because once you roast a nut, it can turn rancid. Nuts should be refrigerated and raw. And so I will take a snack pack full of raw nuts, or my other favorite snack is dark chocolate. Dark chocolate with low sugar. Not the ones with sugar alcohol, but just regular dark chocolate has like 1 gram of sugar for a square, or 2 grams or something like that. So it's very low sugar and it's full of antioxidants and healthy fats. And so I take dark chocolate, I take nuts. And now if I'm in a pinch, I'll eat a Kind bar because it is low glycemic and it only has 5 sugars in it. And so that's a good one. I'll also take turkey sticks, turkey jerky. You can find different forms of turkey meat or I'm sorry, any kind of jerky, whether it's turkey or beef or whatever, as long as it doesn't have nitrates and it's grass-fed, then those are a really good idea. I will also sometimes take fruit. And any other questions? A lot of info on leftovers. Okay, so leftovers, here's my rule of thumb. 3 days and it's gone. So I never eat anything after 3 days. Leftovers can affect your histamine levels. So if you are sensitive or you have histamine issues, then leftovers aren't great. Fresh food is always best. Fresh food in its natural state, freshly cooked, is always going to be the best for your digestion and for assimilation of nutrients. But if you do, maybe freeze it right the day after if you don't think you're going to get to it, because I do like to cook in quantity, but 2 to 3 days. 3 is my absolute longest, but I try to eat it within 1 to 2 days. That's why, like with raw vegetables, that's fine. Those don't go bad, but once they're cooked, it's again 2 to 3 days. Same thing with cooked meat. Yes, longer fast. So I worked at a fasting spa in Palm Springs, and this is what their recommendation was. And this kind of lines up with a lot of different advice that I've heard. 12 hours to 16 hours on a daily basis. 1 day a week is 24 hours. And what that does is it helps to reset not only your glucose levels and your insulin levels, but also helps to heal the gut. Once we go into longer than that, like a 3-day fast, then you're really going to be resetting your gut microbiome. So it's if you have any gut issues, inflammation in the gut, a 3-day fast is a great way to go. If you're going longer than a day, going into 3 days, if you're having a little bit of green juice, you're having some tea, electrolytes are important. There's a little bit of discussion about whether bone broth is good or not. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish with that fast. If you're really doing a gut healing fast, bone broth and veggie juices are okay. But if you're really trying to accomplish that autophagy, water is the key, but always adding a little bit of sea salt and electrolytes. A 7-day fast is recommended. A 6 to 7 day fast is recommended every 6 months. So like twice a year, doing a longer fast. There is also an option. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Prolon, but Prolon is a water fasting mimicking diet, and they send you food in a box, and it's calorie restricted, but they've scientifically come up with a way so that it's not going to trigger that building mode. Once you start eating, you're going into building mode, and then when you stop eating, you're in fasting mode. It actually keeps you in a fasting state, even though you're actually consuming calories, but it's got the right mix of macronutrients, so you're not triggering that. That's a really nice way to do a longer fast so that you don't have to go without food. Now, some people, if you are having issues with blood sugar or metabolic issues, or you have a high toxic load, fasting for a longer period of time might make you weak or nauseous, or have some blood sugar issues. So I always say start slow and then just add on each time. Maybe you do a 36-hour fast the next time. You start with 24 and then maybe go to 48, then or 36, then 48. So slowly build your way up, and there is no problem with ending a fast early. So even if you're going for 7 days and you only hit 4, that's completely fine. Your body gets better at starting to burn fat for fuel, and it's also detoxifying when you're fasting. So your cells are starting to release toxins that can be really hard on the body. So you have to make sure that you're really supporting your organs of eliminations. I love this. How do you resist temptation at social events where there's delicious food, but not necessarily healthy food? You make a plan. So eating 4 ounces of protein before you go to a party is going to help your blood sugar stabilize, and it's going to help your appetite go down. But the other thing that you can do is make sure you always bring something that you want to eat. So whether it's chopped up veggies with, a dip or whatever it is, but it's something that is good for you, then just bring that as a party favor and then, just keep it by your side. The longest fast. This longest fast I've ever done is the 5-day Prolon fast. When I was recovering, oh, nice, 11 days. Nice, Ed. That's great. Again, it depends on how healthy you are and what the toxic load that you're carrying and how metabolically healthy you are. So if you can fast longer, that's great, but do what works for you. Any other questions? All right. Well, I thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you got some good tips. And oh, thank you. Thank you. Working out during a fast, nothing after, if you're fasting for the longer than 2 days or 3 days, then no, you're not supposed to exercise during your fast. You can do some walking or light stretching or yoga. But when you break your muscles down, you need to feed them with a protein, and the protein is going to stop the fast. So you definitely do not want to exercise while you're fasting other than walking or yoga. All right, you guys, thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you so much. And we'll do this again next month. If you guys have suggestions or topics that you want me to cover, let me know. I want to go over digestion and detoxification of the body next time. But if you have anything else, you can let me know here in the center, shoot me an email or a text or whatever. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, you guys have a great night. We'll see you here.